Deafrowe with Deafrowe TV, and I'm back again with another review. In the continuation of the Day of the Triffids, this is part 5 of the Day of the Triffids, 1981. And kind of picking up where part 4 left off, we see Bill here in the university again, of course, and you hear the footsteps in the background, and they're coming towards him. But before I get started on this review, please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Hit that notification bell so you can be ready to see part 6, the finale of this miniseries by BBC, The Day of the Triffids, 1981. Let's get going with part 5 of The Day of the Triffids. As you can see here, Bill is back at the university, still looking for Joe. He sees the note written up on the chalkboard, which it just says Tinsham Manor, or Tinsham Manor, Wiltshire, which is where uh, Mr. Beadley and Major Anderson were planning on going in part 3, and they were, putting together all their people and that's where they were wanting to go. And so Bill sees this written up on this little small chalkboard, and he kind of was like, well, I guess I have to go look there. But as he's doing that, he hears the footsteps coming behind him. And it's none other than Mr. Coker himself, Jack Coker, the one who kidnapped him to begin with and chained him against his will to the blind mob and made him take care of him. And Jack is kind of there for a different reason. He's like, I came to make my peace with these folks. Everything I did was wrong. It didn't work. And my group of people that I was taking care of are all but dead at this point from disease. And Bill goes on to say the exact same thing. It's like, Bill at first is like, well, you come back to get more people for your gangs or whatever. And Coker's not like, no, I've kind of seen the error of my ways. This is not going to work. And these people were, you know, right. We should just try to start over, not try to continue like it was before, and just, because we're outnumbered. We're the minority now. The sighted are the minority, and there's no way physically and mentally we can take care of that many people all at once. And so Coker has come there to make peace with the people that he wrongly did to begin with and kidnapped some of them to do his bidding. And he's just kind of he comes in there. He's obviously defeated. I mean, everything that he thought was true ended up being false. Everything that he thought was going to happen did not happen. Um, Things have only gotten worse, obviously, because we saw through Bill how things got worse. As apparently Coker went through the exact same thing. So it wasn't that Coker was trying to make people do his own bidding, but he was trying to make people do the same bidding that he was willing to do himself, and just thought could force people to do what exactly he was doing. But in doing it himself, he realized everything he was doing was not going to work. And so, and like I said, they find the writing on the chalkboard where all the people went, and that's kind of where they set off to. They grab a couple of the army vehicles, the big old trucks, and set off into the country to look for this place. And of course, I love this scene right here where they're going down the road, and you're seeing how desolate and empty everything is. Those roads are empty, and then you get to this part where there's like this person that was on a bike or whatever. If I can get it right here. It was obviously taken out by a Triffid or some sort, and she's, She was probably getting around on a bike since there's not too many vehicles that can move around, and eventually you're going to run out of petrol, or gasoline. So she's probably riding around on a bike in the country somewhere trying to find food. But the Triffids are everywhere now, as you can see here, and they're communicating. Anywhere, and they are gaining in numbers because they're thriving in this environment. People are pretty much dying left and right, and that's their food source, the decomposition. So they finally get to Tensham, and and they find, and what Coker and Bill find there is basically Tensham has turned into a bigger version of what they were both doing in the city. There's basically two sighted people, or two or three sighted people there taking care of like 20 or so, 30 or so, blind people. And yeah, you see here that, I mean, the preacher doesn't look like he's blind, but everybody that's surrounded him that's praying and everything, every single one of them are blind, and they're all huddled into this house in the middle of nowhere. And of course, they meet up with Miss Durant, um, which is she was one of the original ones that was at the university, and she tells them, it's like, Joe's not here, but she was here. She went on ahead with Beatley and Major Anderson to a different area, and we split up with Mr. Beatley and Major Anderson because we didn't believe in what they were saying about the whole thing with having, rebuilding our society with having multiple kids with multiple partners and all this stuff. We just didn't think that was right. We're Christians here and all this kind of other stuff. And Coker is listening to all this, and you can see in his face, it's like, you got to be kidding me. So you basically took all the blind in, and you're here by yourself and one other sighted guy. And he said, I've already been through this. I know it doesn't work. I said, you can make it work the way it is right now, but you cannot take any more blind people in because the sighted will physically and mentally break down. The blind will start being, I mean, what comes with the blindness is the disease that causes them to die. And that's what he's trying to explain. So Mr. Durant goes on to tell her that because of their disagreements with the Major Anderson and Mr. Beatley, Major Anderson and Mr. Beatley decided to go find somewhere else and lead them to Tensham. Basically, it's like, look, y'all have this place. We're going to go on somewhere else and do our own thing. And they were like, okay, and they kind of left it in peace. And Coker is trying to explain to Miss Durant right here, which is played by Perlita Nelson, by the way, the new actor in this. He's trying to tell her this place could be good and it could be better, but you have got to have rules. You've got to teach these blind people to do something other than basket weaving, which ain't going to do them any good. You got to teach them to feel around, do chores, do all this kind of stuff. You can't just have them sitting around praying all the time doing nothing. And he's like, the blind can be taught to do some useful work. And he's trying to explain all this to Mr. Durant based on his already experienced uh, failure. And he's like, "This is none of this is speculation. You will all die unless you take these precautions. That is a predicted fact. This has already happened with me and Bill." He's trying. Coker, I think, is trying at this point to make up for his bad judgment in doing what he did before by trying to help Mr. Durant, but he's coming off as kind of arrogant and mean, really. But he's speaking from the truth of his own experience, and of course she turns him down, and so him and Bill See right here, Bill's like, "Well, you tried," and so they both get back in their trucks, their army trucks, and decide to move on and see if they can't find Joe. So yeah, they get in the army trucks, and then they basically at this point, uh, Bill has been away for so. I mean, all this takes place within like a few weeks or a few months. I mean, it happens all fairly quickly. All these people, the blindness, and then the disease, and then the death, and then the Triffids. The Triffids are the thing that are moving the slowest in all this. It's almost like a slow. The Triffids are almost like a slow moving zombie. You get your confidence up that they're not there, possibly, and then all of a sudden they got you surrounded because they're just everywhere, especially if you're in this environment in the country somewhere. And they start to kind of see little traffic activity as they're starting to hit these back roads and stuff and try to find Joe. They come across a gas station where it was like two people who were trying to get gas in their car, and both been stung and killed by Triffids right there at the gas station. And then, they get going further down the road and they come across this little, I mean, you got these Triffids are everywhere in the countryside, as you can see here, and they're watching everything they do. In my opinion, and then I haven't read the book that this series is based on. This is just my thoughts on how this movie portrays it. The Triffids can't hear anything and they can't see anything, but they can feel everything through the grounds, kind of like the main the monsters in like Tremors. So they feel the motion, they can see, they can sense the direction it's coming from and everything else. That's my theory on how they work. And of course, they're having to sleep in the trucks every night, as you can see there. And they finally come across this little town right here, and this blind pub owner, it looks like a pub owner, waves like a white flag out the window, trying to get their attention because he hears the vehicles coming down the road, and he thinks if he put a white sheet out the door that they would at least, stop and help him. Of course, being Bill and Coker, they decide to stop and see what's up. They stop and see what's going on. But as Coker's approaching the pub owner is stung by a Triffitt right here. I mean, just slapped right in the face. I mean, it could have been Coker that got hit, but the Triffitt had been waiting for that man to come out of that house or out of that pub for a long time, and knew exactly where that man would have to walk when he come out the door and everything. Because the motion, of course. I mean, there's the Triffitt right behind the bushes waiting on him, and it killed him. And of course, Bill comes in with a shotgun and just basically blows off the head right here with a double barrel shotgun. Does the trick. And essentially kills the Triffitt. Because the little nubs even stop tapping at the bottom of the roots and everything. And at this point, they're discussing like what they're going to do next. And they're in the pub this man was coming out of. And Jack Coker, he's basically saying, "Look, I want to go back to Tension, man. I need more human contact than this. I can't just keep running down these back roads by myself looking for somebody. You can do what you want to do, but I'm going to go back to Tension." So Jack Coker, he decides he's going to go back to Tension and try to approach Mr. Rant in a different way and maybe convince her and help her, maybe not come off as so aggressive. Maybe she'll understand better and all this other stuff, and the preacher as well. And so that's what Coker decides to do at the end of this little discussion in the house. And, they're also talking about the Triffids and stuff like that. And Coker's trying to get information out of Bill about these Triffids. And Bill just basically says, "Look, these plants were created for a special oil We just didn't realize the special oil was going to come with a very special plant. And they said it creeps me out and disgusts me that the state of affairs of this world right now, these plants will thrive and humans will die. And that's, that's kind of what they're discussing here. And then finally, it dawns on. He says something to the effect. Bill says something to the effect that I got to go down south. And before that conversation comes up, Coker goes into this whole spiel about, yes, we have to start over. And we're going to have to start over from the very beginning. We're going to have to learn how to smelt. We're going to have to smelt iron and make stuff to plow. It said a lot of this stuff that we have now eventually is going to rust. It's going to run out. It's going to fade away. So we have to teach the next generation how to make it from scratch, basically. And if we don't start now, we're going to be screwed. Or the next generation is going to be screwed. And so, yeah, they're talking about that. And then finally, Bill, all of a sudden, he's talking, they're just talking and talking. He remembers something about going south. Excuse me. And he's talking to Coker about this. And he remembers Joe talking about a farmhouse overlooking Pulborough. And it's in South Downs. And so this is finally, Bill's like, look, this is what I got to do. I've got to find Joe. You go back to Tension. I got to find Joe, though. I'm not giving up on her. And Coker's like, you don't even know if she's still alive. I'm assuming she's alive, and I will assume that until I know otherwise. And so that's kind of the way he feels. Anyway. And then Coker tells her, like, when you find Joe, pack her up and bring her back to Tension, and I'll have this place set up and ready to go, and you can help me out when you get there. And they agree on that. They become a little bit of little friends, somewhat, during this whole journey. After the fact of all the crap that happened before or between them, and so yeah, I mean, there things happen, I guess you can say. And so yeah, it's raining one day, and he's like I said, he's been heading south for a little while, and he comes across another little town, and this little girl comes out of the house running and jumps in front of the vehicle, and she basically tells Bill's like, Thomas has been hit by something, and it tried to hit me too, and I can't get him to get up or whatever. So he goes over there with his anti-Triffids gun. He finds the little boy, which is the girl's younger brother, dead on the ground from a Triffid. Uh, and finds the Triffid and kills the Triffid with the Triffid gun, which you see right here. And this is just a brutal, dark scene right here where you see Bill and the little girl named Susan, which is played by Emily Dean, basically putting her little brother in in the ground for as a grave with a cross and everything, saying goodbye. And Susan's gonna go with Bill to find Joe. Hmm. As you see here, he's finally made it to South Downs, and he's kind of looking around in the area. He's not sure what direction to go, and he remembers something from the time that they had stayed in the apartment. He says, "Well, let's wait till let's wait till dark, and we'll flash the lights and see if anybody flashes the lights back at us." Because that was kind of a little inside thing that they both knew about each other and experienced together. So they wait till that night, and he starts flashing the headlights on the truck, but nothing happens for a little while. Well, they both go to sleep, and then something happens. That she sees flashing lights, and she wakes Bill up. And Bill sees the light and he's trying to like follow the light, but he ends up he ends up getting a little bit sidetracked and goes down like this road that didn't have an end to it or had an end to it, a dead end road. And then finally he tracks down where the light's coming from, and none other than Joe herself. So everything he thought was correct, he finally find he finally found Joe after all this time. She didn't give up on him, and he didn't give up on her, and they finally met in the place that they had just had a conversation about. So yeah, and plus, the girl also brought along Rufus the dog, so you might see a dog running around in some of these scenes. So they're basically sitting by a little fire in this cottage that's overlooking Pullboro, and they're talking about the things that Bill has seen, and she's basically asking him like, "Is it pitch black out there? I mean, what's it really like?" And he says, "Not too bad. There are communities still trying to give it a go." He talks about Tensham as one of them, and the fact that there is supposed to be another one with Major Anderson and Mr. Beasley as well, but he doesn't know where that one is. And he talks about going back to Tensham in order to find Coker and tell him that I found Joe, whatever. And she's like, "Well, we can't go anywhere for 2 weeks because my blind friend here is pregnant and she's due in 2 weeks." And so Bill just decides, "Well, I'll just take a truck, go myself, and let them know that we're here, and then I'll come right back." And so that's kind of what he does. He grabs one of the Land Rovers, as you see here, leaves Susan with Joe, and takes off to back to Tensham. But he gets to Tensham and he realizes the place is infested with Triffids. The gate wide open, Triffids everywhere, and it's not a good looking, not a good looking, not a good sign. Let's put it that way. He looks over to and the lights are off. It's dark. Nothing's going on there. I mean, you can just look at this and see that mm, nothing's not nothing's right here. So he finally gets to the house and he walks in and he sees like basically a graveyard inside the house. Everybody has died in Tensham, including Miss Durant. All the blind people finally succumb to the disease that's been going around plaguing them. And Miss Durant, along with him, has passed away. And so he basically goes back to the farmhouse in Pilbara, tells them the news that he couldn't find Coker and everybody is dead at Tensham. So he doesn't really know what to do now and or where to go. And so him and Joe both just decide, look, we just have to make do with what we have here and just do what we can. We'll have to figure out a way to protect this little, farmhouse with what we have. And with your knowledge of the Triffids, we're going to have to figure out a way to keep the Triffids out of this area. And then they cut back. Yeah, they cut back from the farmhouse, and then you see the farmhouse is just like surrounded by Triffids because they're way out in the middle of the country, and that's where the Triffids most thrive because it's nothing but farmland, and they can move around on that ground fairly easy, a lot faster than they can in cities where it's mostly concrete. So as you can see here, the Triffids are gaining numbers, and the humans are losing numbers, and it's just crazy. I like that scene right there. That's one of my favorite scenes. Was showing you this and the tapping noise that they're making at the end right here, and they're just kind of like moving a little bit. But yes, that is the end of my review of part 5. But like I said, throughout parts 1 through part 5, everything's happened within weeks and months of each other. And we finally get to the part 6 finale. You're going to see that it moves from weeks and months to many months and maybe even a year or so later. And you'll see in the next part that I do in the next review for part 6 of the Day of the Triffids. And like I said, I love this show. I apologize for the coughing. That's one of the reasons I haven't been able to put out more videos recently, is I've had a little bit of coughing issue recently. So just getting my voice back a little bit, getting back into part 5 of this. I can't wait to do part 6, so you can finish up this incredible miniseries done by BBC back in 1981 called The Day of the Triffids. And that's part 5, and that's my review, and that's Deafrowe out.